Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Thumbprint cookies. That's right, I am very excited to be sharing Grandma's amazing thumbprint cookie recipe. And for the record, not my grandma, a complete stranger's grandma, whose identity will be revealed in the blog post. But anyway, using her incredible and easy to make dough, we're actually going to do two versions of these cookies, only one of which require thumbs to make. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with this very simple dough. And we'll begin by adding some powdered sugar to some room temperature butter. And we'll take a spatula and cream this all together. And this dough is so simple and basic, we don't even need any electric mixers or any mechanical assistance of any kind. Okay, we're simply going to spatulate that butter and powdered sugar until it creams together, at which point we're going to stop and add a few more ingredients, including some vanilla extract, the pure and the real please, as well as a little touch of almond extract, which is technically optional, but I enjoy it. We will also toss in a pinch of salt, as well as one large egg yolk, which should not be confused here with a whole egg. Okay, we just want the yolk. And then we'll take our spatula and give that a mix. And right about here, the people that would insist on an electric mixer for this are going to say that by using just a spatula here, we're not going to be able to perfectly emulsify all those ingredients together, which is absolutely true. Or if you use a machine, this is going to look a lot smoother and creamier. And it won't have that kind of broken, grainy-ish appearance like this one does. But it does not matter, because when we stop and add the flour and continue to mix this, everything's going to get incorporated perfectly, and we're going to end up with the exact same final product as the people that pulled out the electric mixer. So go ahead and use the machinery if you want. I mean, in this production, you are the Helen Mirren of whether you're smearing. But to me, there's no advantage, and you're going to have more to clean up. So I'm going to blend this with nothing more than a spatula until all the flour is incorporated. And don't worry, you really can't overmix this dough. So if you mix it further once the flour is incorporated, it doesn't really cause a problem. But the point is, why would you keep on mixing once something's mixed? That's kind of crazy. So as soon as we have everything mixed together, we'll stop. And we will move on to form our cookies, which I like to portion out using this little sorbet scoop, because one rounded scoop is going to give me exactly a half an ounce, also known as 1 tablespoon. And as we scoop these, what we'll do is transfer those onto a plate of white sugar and roll that around until it's covered, at which point we'll roll that between our palms to form a beautifully smooth ball, which we will then place on a Silpat line baking sheet. And in addition to making the outside of the cookie look better and have a better texture, that sugar is also going to prevent it from sticking to your palms as you roll this. And by the way, one of the secrets to perfect, uncracked thumbprint cookies is not refrigerating the dough. Okay, we really do want to work with that at room temperature so it's nice and soft. And then once we have those panned up, one more tip for avoiding cracks is before we make the well in the center of each one, we'll want to give those a little initial pressing with our fingers. All right, not too much. We'll just flatten those out a little bit before we move on to final fabrication. And there's basically 2 ways you can go here. One is a shortbread cookie featuring some jam, which is the one we're going to do first. And the other is a jam cookie featuring some shortbread. And for this first one, instead of using our thumb, I'm actually going to use the bottom of this freakishly large wooden spoon that I've lightly dusted with powdered sugar, and we'll press that straight down in, but not all the way to the bottom. Okay, we want to stop about 1/8 of an inch short. And by poking straight down with this spoon versus our thumb, we're going to get a smaller, sharper indentation that's going to give these more of what I call a bakery look. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have a thick spoon like this, you could just use one of your smaller non-thumb fingers. And then once all our dough balls have been handled, we'll go ahead and fill those with whatever jam we want. And right here I'm using one made from Marionberry, which I believe is the only berry named after a former U.S. mayor. So just a little bit of trivia for you. And then once we have those filled, I do like to give them the old tappa to kind of settle everything down. At which point these are ready to transfer into the center of a 325-degree oven for 15 minutes, or until they are not golden brown. All right, because with these cookies, we're choosing taste and texture over appearance. So these really are going to be quite light and barely blonde when they come out. But don't worry, they are cooked. And unlike the tops, the bottoms will be golden brown. And then what we'll do is very carefully transfer those onto a cooling rack and let them cool completely before we try to ice them. Otherwise, that hot jam will kind of melt the icing and it won't look as good. So I let those sit for about 20 minutes before I grabbed my pastry bag and a fine tip and piped over a very basic icing, which of course I will give you the recipe for. It's just powdered sugar and water. And I'm going to do 4 lines one way and 4 the other. And be careful not to move your piping tip too fast. Okay, watch the center of this one. Because I did that too quick, and that line of icing was not thick enough, it kind of spread apart. And now I have a hole in the middle, which I might go back and fix later. I'm not sure, depends on my mood. But anyway, the point is go nice and slow and steady, so you have a nice even flow. And of course, like anything, the more you do, the better you'll get. And then once we have those iced, what we want to do is let them sit for about 15 or 20 minutes so that that icing sort of hardens up. So I let those sit for a little bit before plating them up, and I promptly went in for a taste. And people like to throw the term melt in your mouth around, but these truly were melt in your mouth. I mean, the texture is so tender and buttery. It's a miracle these things stay together. And of course, we have that beautiful, gooey, jammy center. So it is no mystery why this is such an iconic cookie, especially around the holidays. Okay, so that was version 1. Basically a shortbread cookie with a little bit of jam. Now let me show you version 2, which is much more jam forward. And these get prepped and panned up exactly the same way. Except instead of pressing down with a wooden spoon or dowel, we're going to use an actual human thumb. Which as you can see is going to give us a significantly larger and more shallow depression. Into which we're going to be able to spoon like twice as much jam. And this time I'm going with strawberry. And in case it matters to you, the redder berries like strawberry, raspberry, etc. do probably make for a better looking cookie. Or at least more colorful. And that's it. Once those are filled, we'll give them the old tappa just like the first batch. And we will again pop those into the center of a 325 oven for 15 minutes. Or until again they're not quite golden brown. And then the only difference post-baking with these, because they are pressed out a little thinner and have more jam, they are much more fragile when they're warm. So we should probably let those sit on the pan for at least 5 minutes, so they firm up a little bit before we try to transfer them onto a cooling rack. And since we did the fancy icing on the first batch, we'll just go ahead and use some powdered sugar on these. And what's going to happen after you dust that over is that the powdered sugar on the jam is going to dissolve and disappear, but the sugar that's on the cookie part is going to stay, which once plated up makes for a very simple but beautiful presentation. And of course, to be fair and consistent, I'll go ahead and taste one of these as well. But unfortunately, as I picked that one up, I dropped it on the table. And it broke, so I had to grab another one. But anyway, even though these were made with the same dough, using basically the same technique, this style does give you a different experience. Alright, it's definitely jammier, but because it's also thinner, these seemed even more tender and melt in your mouth. Oh, and by the way, one tip for you kids watching. Don't be putting your cookie back on the serving platter after every bite. Okay, that's not good table manners. You're only allowed to do that kind of stuff if you're filming a recipe video. But anyway, that's it. How to make thumbprint cookies. 2 slightly different styles. And which one did I like better? It was a tie. They were both perfect in their own way. And for variety's sake, you should probably do some of each. But whether you do both or just one or the other, I really do hope you give these a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.